Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying, he gets reborn in Young Justice with a system that lets him sell black Clover Grimoires. He sells it to the heroes and the villains, who can now use magic. What will happen in Young Justice because of this?
Not enough to change the plan. Gordon came out a moment later, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Paperwork nightmare," he said, then waved it off as if he had no intention of honoring the complaint. "Go. I'll clean up here. If this leads to another lab, I want advance notice." "You'll get it," Batman said. He fired a line to the rooftop and went up in one smooth pull. On the roof, he paused long enough to watch the river reflect the harbor sodium lights. He filed the rhythm of Crane's page pulses, the way the book had fought the clamp, the resonance Oracle tagged. He logged the roofmen's faces, the driver's shoes, the serial cut into the burner's sim tray. He noted the cadence of the other team's footfalls and filed it with a group he'd heard at a Narrows warehouse 2 nights ago. Threads, not proof. Enough to move the next piece. The Batmobile's panel lit as he approached the far ledge. He vaulted down a rusted fire escape and dropped into the driver's side. The car sealed. The interior readouts rolled through status checks. "Zatara is reachable," Oracle said. "Not on mission. He's at the tower in New York. I can patch you secure in 5. "Do it," Batman said. He set the bagged grimoire into a magnetic cradle that closed around it like a vice. The bag didn't crinkle. The veins inside didn't glow. Also, Oracle added, Nightwing uploaded a full data pack on Bloodhaven. He tagged Deathstroke's fight last night. The enhancement pattern in Slade's muscle activity matches a signature close to this book's baseline. Not identical, but in the family. Batman watched the street roll under the hood. He bought a different volume. "Seems that way," Oracle said. "Dick's sending over telemetry, but bottom line? Whoever's selling these is hitting both sides hard. You've already seen that firsthand. Which is why we end it," Batman said, "even. Pull every camera within 6 blocks of Pasco and 12th for the last 48 hours. Scan for the case Crane used and anyone who carried a similar form factor. Prioritize faces meeting buyers' profiles at 4 other sites we flagged." "I'm on it," Oracle said. Keys clicked in his ear. "And Bruce, nice work with Crane." "Thank you," he said. He meant it, and he kept driving. The city's grid pulled him toward the river bridge and then uptown to the safe house with the vault that couldn't be photographed even by League hardware. He took a side street to avoid a slowed ambulance and passed a newsstand where the night clerk counted change. Gotham felt awake and tired at once. He took one more look at the sealed book in the cradle. The clamp didn't move. The veins didn't pulse. He kept both eyes on the road and listened to Oracle line up Zatara on the other end. The night stayed cold. Chapter 16, Audience in Poseidonis. I took the coastal shuttle to Happy Harbor and walked the rest of the way along the cliffs. The water below was clear. The tide rolled in and out at a steady pace. I stood on a rock shelf and let the spray hit my face. My jacket stuck to my shoulders. I wiped my hands on the fabric and laughed quietly. "All right," I said happily. "Let's go meet a king." The water grimoire floated at my side. The cover shone a deep blue with faint turquoise ripples moving just under the surface. It felt calm. Not loud like lightning. Not sharp like ice. It stayed close to my shoulder, as if it wanted to get this over with. I stepped to the edge and crouched. I shaped a thin dome of water around my head, pulled fresh air through it, and sealed the rim to my collar. The bubble stayed clear. I slid into the ocean and let the cold climb up my sleeves. The sound changed. Surface noise faded. A low, steady hush took over. I kicked once and let the current take me. I didn't rush. I followed the coast for a while, letting the shallows turn into deeper water. Kelp swayed. Schools of silverfish moved like one thought. I stuck a hand out and the grimoire nudged my palm with a tiny push. I grinned into the bubble. Yet. I know the way. The water grew darker, then blue again as the light cut through open bands. A faint glow appeared in the distance, not sunlight-constructed light. The shield around Poseidoni's flickered like heat haze. I slowed and raised both hands to show I wasn't trying anything. Two figures approached fast. Their armor caught the light in clean lines. One carried a trident with a crest at the base. The other had a staff with a braided grip and a narrow blade. They halted 5 yards out, balanced and ready. "Halt," the trident bearer said, voice steady through the water. "Identify yourself and state your business." I smiled. "Shredder. I'm here to request an audience with King Orin. It's about an acquisition." "Acquisition," the staff-bearer echoed, unimpressed. "By what right do you approach the royal shield?" "By the right of a seller with something your king might want," I replied cheerfully. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'll accept a binding escort, and I won't touch anything inside the shield without permission." The trident bearer shifted his grip slightly, assessing. "You have dealt with Aqualad." "Correct," I said, letting the words sit. "He's doing well." The staff-bearer nodded once, almost a reflex. "You speak of him with familiarity. Your name reached our patrol boards yesterday." "I figured," I said. "I make an impression." The trident bearer considered for a moment, then raised his weapon a fraction. "You will submit to a glyph ring and follow our pace." "Works for me." He drew a circle in the water with the trident's butt. A thin ring of white light formed around my chest and tightened until it sat like a sash. It didn't constrict breathing. It just hummed. I didn't resist. The guards shared a look and gestured forward. We swam in. The shield folded around us. The water inside ran warmer by a few degrees. The streets of Poseidoni's stretched out in layered terraces, each lined with coral stone and glowing guidelines along the edges. Atlanteans moved across walkways with efficient strokes. Market stalls sat anchored by braided cords, vendors passing sealed jars through the water with practiced ease. Children darted after ribbonfish. A group of priestesses adjusted a ribbon of light around a pillar until it steadied into a clean band. The guards took me along the main vein and then down a side corridor that sloped toward the palace. I caught a glimpse of a training yard where 4 young soldiers practiced with water blades. Their stances were grounded. Their strikes were clean. One of them saw me, blinked, and looked away fast like he wasn't supposed to stare. We reached the outer court. The palace sat grounded into the rock with columns that looked grown instead of carved. A tall gate opened a hand's width and then widened more when the glyph ring on my chest pulsed. The guards escorted me into a wide chamber marked by 3 large discs of glowing sand anchored in the floor. A flow screen separated it from the next hall. 2 more guards waited there. One lifted a laced shell and spoke into it, her voice carried evenly through water. "Petition from surface merchant requesting audience with the king regarding an acquisition." We waited. I didn't fidget. I kept my hands where everyone could see them. The water grimoire sat to my right shoulder, still and bright. One of the guards eyed it, then eyed me, then looked away. The flow screen parted. Mara entered first. Her hair fanned out behind her in a smooth red line. She wore simple armor instead of ceremonial cloth. Her eyes went right to the grimoire and stayed there a second before moving to me. "You asked to see the king," she said, tone clear and polite but not warm. "Yes," I said happily. "Your Highness." Her gaze didn't soften. "You have conducted business with my protégé already." "Aqualad handled it well," I said. "He adapts fast." "He does," she said evenly. That is one reason I trained him. It is also why I am here now. Oren is hearing reports from our coastal watch, I will not interrupt him without cause. You will state your case to me. Fair, I said. I won't waste your time. I offer a grimoire of water magic. Cost is 10 billion. Terms are instant and permanent. No duplication, no recall. Buyer gains full control. I remain neutral after the transaction. She watched me. You believe it suits our king? I know it suits him, I said. He already commands the sea by birth and by training. This isn't a substitute. It adds control, pressure, density, form. Less energy to shape more water. Faster recovery after strain. Cleaner constructs. It won't change his mind. It extends his reach. The last time someone promised extensions, we spent 3 months cleaning weapons off our borders, Mara replied, unmoved. Your business makes ripples far beyond a sail. I kept my voice light, but I set my shoulders with it. I'm aware. I also know who your enemies are and how they try to exploit gaps. This closes one. Her eyes narrowed a fraction. You claim to understand our enemies. I don't claim anything I can't stand on, I said calmly. You know Ocean Master's habits. You know Black Manta's logistics. Both of them probe your patrol lapses and your recovery windows. This removes a window. Her chin lifted a hair at the names, then settled. You speak plainly. That helps. It does not persuade. She turned a hand slightly. The water around the room stilled, as if waiting on her. You will not approach the throne room. You will demonstrate, once, in the trial hall. I will judge if Oren sees you. Understood, I said. She gestured. The guards eased aside. The flow screen opened in a long slit. I followed Mara through 2 short corridors and a vaulted hall full of steady glow. At the far end, a training circle sat marked by 5 pale rings. A scoring board lay anchored to the left. Carved grooves lined the walls for water to grab onto if thrown wrong. She moved to one side of the circle. You will not summon uncontrolled hazards. I nodded. I'll keep it tight. I lifted my hand and the water grimoire rose a foot. The pages opened. The glow deepened. I shaped a thin band, no bigger than my wrist. It turned once. I shifted a finger and compressed it. The water went from clear to dense. A small ball formed, the size of my fist. I squeezed and forced a stream through a hair-thin funnel. The stream cut a shallow line into the scoring board's surface and stopped. Mara watched without commentary. Again. Different form. I drew water off the floor gutters and made a pair of rings. I set them counter-rotating. They held with no wobble. I pinched one side and rolled a lens into a flat shield. The edge stayed clean. I held it for a count of 20 and let it go. No stray current shook free. Mara moved closer. She set 2 fingertips on the edge of the shield and pressed. The form flexed and returned. She pressed harder, testing the cohesion. The form held. She let it dissolve. Your control is fine. Your restraint argues you know what you are doing. I try not to break people's walls when I'm asking for money, I said with a small smile. Her mouth didn't move, but the tension in her shoulders eased a shade. She lifted her hand. Very well. You may speak to the king. She led me 2 levels down through a columned corridor. The throne room's outer hall opened with a neat slow fold, and the guard posted there checked Mara's nod before stepping aside. Oren stood near a map table at the far end, armor bare of ornament except for the trident crest. He had a file of patrol notes open. He finished reading one line, closed it, and looked up. His eyes were clear. His posture was relaxed but ready, a fighter's rest. He took me in, then the book, then Mara, and set the chain of order by that sequence. "Welcome," he said, voice even. "You have business?" "Yes," I said cheerfully. "I bring an offer. A grimoire of water magic. I believe it fits your hand." He glanced at Mara. She lifted her chin by a fraction. He demonstrated control. He speaks without evasion. He understands the scale of what he sells. Oren focused on me again. Aqualad reported a similar purchase. Ice. He did, I said. He uses it carefully. He adapted in under a day. A light passed through Oren's eyes at the mention of his protégé. It wasn't loud. It was a brief shift. He nodded once, as if that piece had settled in the right place. "You sell to all," he said. "I sell to any who meet the price," I answered. "Heroes, villains, kings. I don't pick sides after the sale." "Then I will pick the side now," Oren replied. His tone didn't change, but the air felt firmer for it. "Our people have suffered from men who claimed to bring gifts. They took what was not theirs and left ruin at our borders. I will not bind our city to a tool that replaces duty." "It won't," I said calmly. "You already carry the duty. This shortens the road between your order and the water's answer. Less strain. Cleaner lines. That's it." Oren considered that. He moved around the map table with clean strokes and stopped 2 paces from me. "Demonstrate for me." I lifted my hand. The grimoire opened again. I shaped a pillar as wide as a wrist and as tall as a man. I twisted the core so density increased toward the center. The surface stayed smooth. I cut a clean square out of the center and set it spinning. I dissolved the outer skin without letting the center collapse. Then I released it all at once and left the floor clear. "Now at pressure," Oren said. I formed a sphere the size of my head and raised it. I tightened the outer layer and squeezed until the center bulged. The pressure gauge embedded in the wall ticked upward. I let it hit a marked line used for Atlantean drills and held it without leak or shake. Mara watched the gauge and gave Oren a brief nod. He looked to me again. "And the cost?" 10 billion, I said. "Immediate transfer. Permanent binding." Oren did not blink. "You will not restrict its use." "I never do," I said. "I don't install safeties. I don't install leashes. I sell what I sell." He glanced toward the rear hall. "Summon Garth," he said to a guard. "And Caldere HM if he has returned from the surface." The guard bowed and swam off. Oren returned his attention to me. "You know Caldere HM. You have met my wife. You understand the weight in this room now. You will answer plainly when they arrive." "I've been answering plainly since I entered your shield," I said, still light but firm. "I'm not here to dress it up." Garth arrived first, shoulders damp with effort from a training set. He bowed to Oren and nodded to Mara with a respectful warmth that came from years instead of months. Then he saw the grimoire and the careful ease left his face. "That is the source," he said quietly to Oren. "Yes," Oren answered. "You will observe." Caldere HM arrived a minute later, posture steady, expression controlled. He greeted Oren first, then Mara, then Garth with a small nod. His eyes came to me last. He registered recognition without surprise. "I expected we would see you again," Calder said calmly. "You move fast." "I like to keep busy," I said happily. Oren stood between us and made the ask without weight. "He offers a water volume. I will take counsel from both of you before I commit the treasury." Calder's gaze went to the grimoire. "He provided me an ice volume. It has not interfered with our city's disciplines. It has required caution. It has aided missions." Garth circled once, not close, reading currents. It changes the response curve, he said, more to Oren than to me. You know how hard water forms eat effort when you shape heavy constructs. This compresses the work. It will extend your endurance in a fight. That can tempt a ruler to push farther than prudence. Oren listened. Mara watched him hear it. Calder did not interrupt. I kept my tone even. The temptation is a choice. You already have instruction against excess built into your laws and your training. The book doesn't erase those. If anything, it makes them easier to obey when you're exhausted. Mara met my eyes. You place much trust in will. I've met enough of your enemies to know the difference between will and impulse, I said. Your king doesn't break when the tide rises. He makes space for everyone to breathe. This helps him do that without burning his muscles out. Calder's mouth tipped a fraction in quiet agreement at the last sentence. He was careful not to show more than that in front of the throne. Oren noted it and moved on. You said permanent, Oren said. If I die, does it move? No, I said. It binds to the buyer. You can designate protocols for containment, but the power doesn't transfer to your heir by itself. Garth looked relieved at that in a very small way. Mara only nodded once. Calder's hands relaxed slightly at his sides. Oren straightened. The price is high. I know, I said. That's part of the point. It slows down fools. It forces organized actors to think before they reach for it. Oren's eyes didn't leave mine. You sold one to someone who is no fool and no friend. Several, I said, still even. You have a good intelligence network. You always did. He let that sit. He glanced at Calder and Garth again. Calder inclined his head once. Garth made a small, reluctant sound in his throat and then nodded as well. Oren turned to Mara. She held his gaze for a long second, then spoke low enough for only us to hear. You will keep your rules. You will not chase with it. If you promise that, I agree. He reached and rested 2 fingers against her forearm for a breath, acknowledgement without display. Then he faced me. We will buy it, he said. The funds will be drawn from a reserve that does not affect food, housing, or temple needs. You will deliver it now. You will remain while we test forms, and you will not introduce new variables without warning. Done, I said gladly. He stepped into the trial hall with me and the others. He didn't call attendants. He didn't summon a ceremony. He held out one hand. I lifted the grimoire between us. It floated with its spine toward him, waiting. Contact is simple, I said. You'll feel it align. Don't fight it. Don't overfeed it, either. It isn't a well. It's a door. He understood that. He set his palm on the cover. The page lights rose steady, not flashy. The currents in the room shifted as if every line wanted to point toward his hand. The pressure gauge pinged 1 notch and settled. Oren's eyes sharpened for a beat, then stabilized. He took his hand away. The book stayed open, then closed on its own and flattened like a calm sea. He lifted his other hand and formed a water blade without calling his water bearers. The edge set instantly, cleaner than usual. He extended it to full length and then snapped it down to a knife with no lag. He dispelled it and made a sphere the size of a child's head. It compacted cleanly. He threw it forward. It stopped on a coin-sized point and held there without wobble. Garth exhaled under his breath. Calder's eyes lit in the small way he allowed himself when he was pleased. Mara didn't speak. She watched her husband's shoulders and his breathing rate. Both stayed normal. He didn't push past that. Oren lowered his hand. He gave a single nod. The book remained near his shoulder, dim and obedient. The system chimed in my head, neat and precise. Transaction complete, 10 billion credited. Buyer, Aquaman. Water magic transferred successfully. I didn't announce it. I didn't need to. Oren knew when the binding took. Atlanteans aren't slow about that kind of thing. He turned to Calder. You will assist me with calibration drills later. Yes, my king, Calder replied calmly, though there was a quiet pride behind it. Oren faced me again. You will give Mara the limits you have observed from other volumes. Not names. Not locations. Only the hard lines. Understood, I said. Short bursts stack better than long, heavy output. Don't let it carry you. If you feel lightheaded, you stop. If water around you tastes metallic, disperse your forms and reset. The book adapts to confidence. It does not replace judgment. Mara listened and stored each line without comment. Garth asked one technical question about pulse tempo and pressure bleed. I explained what I'd seen with surface users and what I'd tested by myself. Calder added one note about ice layering on top of water shields for mixed environment fights. Oren considered both and then moved us to practical work. He made a column half as thick as a man and hollowed the center with no chatter. He turned it sideways and lifted it as if it were a solid beam. He held it there for a slow count of 30 and then let it melt back into the room without a splash. He shaped 5 smaller spheres and set them to rotate at different speeds. He slowed the fastest one down to match the others and then stopped them all at once with just his thumb. He didn't grin. He didn't announce what he felt. He looked satisfied and ready to learn more. Mara watched him and relaxed the last inch in her jaw. Garth looked like he had a dozen drills in mind. Calder bowed his head and said nothing, but his eyes said enough. I drifted back a foot to give the family space. Oren glanced my way with a short nod that wasn't quite dismissal and wasn't quite invitation. I knew the rhythm. I kept quiet. We spent another hour on scaling, thin sheets, thick pushes, rapid darts, weighty clamps. Oren tested how fast recovery came after a heavy compression set. He tested how sharply he could switch from force to gentleness. He tested how well the book responded to instinct. It answered him without lag. Mara called the end of the session when she saw his hands start to tense on the second knuckle. He didn't argue. He closed his fingers and let the water ease back into proper flow. He faced me last. It does what you said. It does, I said, easy again. You already do the hard part. This cuts the waste. He gestured to a guard. Escort our guest to the outer court. He will be fed before he departs. He looked to me one more time and set his tone in that calm king way that didn't need loudness. You will not come to our gates without notice. But if you do come with notice, and if your business is like this, we will hear you. Understood, I said happily. Pleasure doing business. Mara accompanied us to the court. She didn't fill the walk with words. At the gate she paused. You are quick to smile, she said, not unkindly. Carry that habit carefully. I do, I said. It goes away when it has to. She held my gaze for one breath, recognized the line, and inclined her head. Good. The guards removed the glyph sash. The shield opened. Outside water flowed cooler. I adjusted the bubble at my collar and drifted back 2 body lengths. Calder stopped just at the threshold. I will let the team know you are alive, he said evenly. They worry when unusual sellers vanish under the sea. I'll try not to make a habit of it, I said with a small laugh. Tell them the food down here is worth the risk. A brief hint of a smile touched his face, then left. I will. He returned to duty. I turned and swam for the open blue. The city lights dimmed behind me until they were aglow under the water. The grimoire stayed quiet at my side. The current pushed from the right. I let it carry me toward the long band of lighter water near the surface. I broke through a mile off the coast. The air was cool and clean. I pulled the bubble off my face and let the wind dry my cheeks. I floated on my back and watched a gull cut across the sky. Then I rolled and started a slow swim toward the rocks. Business done. No one punched me. No one tried to steal the book. That counted as a good day by any measure. I climbed onto the shelf and wrung out my sleeves. The grimoire spun once, neat and satisfied, then settled. I tapped the corner with my knuckle. Good work, I said, grinning. Let's see who's next. Chapter 17, Team Rates. I reached the beach below Mount Justice just as the tide finished turning. The sand held a thin line of damp that looked like a ruler's mark. The morning air was cool enough to make my breath feel clean, and the water rolled in with a steady rhythm that made everything easier to time. I took off my shoes, wriggled my toes against the sand, and waved at the gulls like I owned the place. Home court advantage, I said happily. At least for the demo. The water grimoire hovered at my shoulder, calm and bright after yesterday's royal visit. A little farther out, the sea lifted in neat columns and settled again. That was Aqualad and Aquaman working through control drills. I stayed well out of their lane. No sense drifting into a king's splash zone. I stretched my arms and let 6 grimoires orbit me: water, wind, fire, earth, lightning, and light. Darkness lingered lower like it preferred shadows even on a sunny day. The hum around me was soft, like a handful of power cords plugged into the same strip. My body felt awake without that jittery edge. Good sign. A familiar voice came from behind me. Are you making a solar system out of library books? I grinned and looked over my shoulder. Robin stood on the rock path with his hands in his pockets, cape tucked, mask gleaming just enough to catch the morning. He had that amused tilt to his head that made it hard to tell if he was amused or measuring me for a problem later. Morning, short stack, I said cheerfully. You're early. Kid Flash jogged up next, skidding the last step so he could splash into the shallow water and act like he meant to. No one calls him short stack except me, Wally said, pointing at himself and then throwing both hands wide. Also, hi, yes, books floating, I totally saw that last time but I still have questions. Miss Martian drifted down a second later, hair catching the breeze. She landed lightly on the sand and smoothed her skirt with both hands. I brought cookies, she said, holding up a tin. She looked proud and a little nervous. I thought it would be nice. Best sales meeting ever, I said. Thank you. She blushed and set the tin on the flattest rock she could find. I hope they are okay. I tried a new recipe. Aqualad lifted one hand from the water farther out, acknowledged us with a quiet nod, and returned to shaping a long column. Aquaman matched his tempo. I left them alone. The team focused on me. Robin scanned the orbiting grimoires. So. You came back. I like the neighborhood, I said lightly. And the neighbors. Wally hooked his thumbs into his belt and bounced on the balls of his feet. We heard. You sold to, like, actual royalty. And Clark. And do I have to say his name out loud? Because if I say his name out loud I'll get a very long talk later. Your secret is safe with me, I said. Also, nice recovery on the docks the other night. I took notes. Robin's mouth twitched. You watched? Of course I watched, I said happily. I'm an investor in outcomes. I like to see returns. Miss Martian folded her hands. You didn't interfere. I don't interfere unless someone stops breathing, I said, and I meant it. You had it. Robin let the silence sit for a beat. Then he said what he came to say. We're here because we want to talk about terms. Wally leaned in. And by talk, he means listen to me pitch about why I deserve lightning in my life. Just to set expectations. Miss Martian glanced at both of them and then at me. We talked as a team. Aqualad knows we're having a conversation. We didn't want to interrupt his training time with King Orin. Good plan, I said. He's in a mood to break all the efficiency records for the next week. Now, since we're all being honest, I'll be plain. I came to offer 3 volumes. No substitutions once selected. Same price as everyone else. Same binding. Robin crossed his arms. 10 billion. Each. Each, I confirmed, cheerful but not coy. Wally's jaw dropped a little. That is okay, that's, like, a lot of commas. Miss Martian bit her lower lip. I do not have money. Robin didn't flinch. We expected that number. We did the math on the League's emergency discretionary funds and our sponsors' procurement policies. If we authorize through the right channels, it's feasible. Wally threw his hands up. Translate feasible into non-Robin, please. Robin didn't look away from me. Oracle has standing authority for contingency acquisitions that meet specific criteria. That's as much as I'm going to say out loud. If this goes forward, it won't be a surprise to the person who would be most surprised. Noted, I said. My grin stayed easy. I keep records clean, and I don't mislabel invoices. If that helps. It helps, Robin said. I clapped once, quietly. Then let's talk fit. I'm not giving the speedster a fire volume. You are not a grill. Wally laughed once and pointed at me. Thank you. Also, rude. But thank you. Lightning, I said to him, and the yellow book rose to my right. It won't make you faster. That's not what it does. What it does is let you manage charge, bleed off static safely, dump built-up without fried shoes, and route current as needed. You'll get conductive constructs and fine control over ionization. That should help when you run in storm conditions or inside a lab with fragile equipment. You'll also be able to stun without touching. He stared at it like it was a plate of food and he'd been told to wait for grace. That sounds like 10 billion reasons to eat my vegetables. Don't lick it, Robin said dryly. Wasn't going to, Wally said, not convincing anyone. I turned to Robin. You've got 2 that makes sense. Darkness is redundant with certain gear you already use, and your mentor already has a copy. You could still take it, but it's boring for you. He tipped his head. Flattering. Wind suits you better, I said. The green book floated between us at eye level. You like angles. You like control of space. Wind gives you pressure changes, sound management, and lift that won't make you a kite. It won't fly you across the city, but it will let you adjust trajectory mid-leap and kill echoes in tight spaces. It'll knock foam darts off target and clear smoke without broadcasting your position. You'll also get an emergency cushion that deploys automatically if you drop 10 meters or more. That's written into the binding. Wally blinked. You come with airbags. Only for people who somersault off cranes for fun, I said. Robin didn't smile, but his chin tipped down as if he had just filed away 10 new use cases. What about sound? Wind can shape a cone in front of your face and eat your footfalls without making a weird vacuum trail, I said. It needs practice. You'll figure it out in an afternoon. He didn't argue. I looked at Miss Martian last. You already resist the binding better than most. So I'm not going to suggest anything that fights your instincts. She stood a little straighter. Thank you. Light or water are both good fits for you, I said. But you share lanes with 2 other people when you do that. I'd rather give you something that helps you keep everyone safe without overlapping too much. She waited, patient. I lifted the light grimoire until it glowed on its own. Light will help you shield your team faster and stronger without burning yourself out. It cleans up confusion fields and makes counter-illusions easier to break. It also plays well with your telekinesis. You'll be able to harden a light panel and push against it instead of draining yourself by holding everything directly. She looked interested in that in a very quiet way. Like a bridge I can lean on. Exactly, I said. Wally nudged her with his shoulder. Mgan bridges everything already. She smiled at him. That is kind. Robin kept it practical. What about cost again? I want to say it out loud before we move. 10 billion each, I repeated calmly. No discounts, no bundles, no coupons. Wally flapped both hands. Do not say coupons in front of a billionaire. Consider it said, I answered. He coughed into his hand and tried to look very adult. Okay. One last thing. Side effects. If I get this, am I going to, like, shock my hair off? Because that would be a deal breaker. This is primo speedster hair. Your hair will be fine, I said. The binding matches your body. If you overload, you'll feel tingles and your teeth will buzz. That's your warning to ground or discharge into the air. You won't accidentally stun Robin unless you forget to touch the sand first. Rude again, Wally said, smiling now. Robin pretended he didn't enjoy that. What about failure modes with wind? You'll get lightheaded if you pull too much negative pressure around your head, I said. Your mask will fog if you don't bleed heat correctly. Start small, layer slowly. Do not do barrel rolls with it until you can hold a coin still in a cross breeze. Copy, he said. Miss Martian raised a hand a little, like she was in class. For light, if I shield too much, will it blind anyone close to me? It will glow, I said. But you can keep it at a low, diffuse level. It only flashes if you tell it to. If you panic, it defaults to protection first, not illumination. That means it hardens instead of exploding with brightness. Train that reflex and you're safe. She nodded with relief. Good. We stood in a loose circle with the waves lapping close enough to wet our toes. I spun the 3 books they'd picked in a slow orbit and then stopped them in front of each buyer. The others hung back, dim. Okay, I said happily, clapping once. Demonstration time. Hands only. No heroics. Wally held his out first because of course he did. I was born for this moment. Don't feed it like a stadium, I said, guiding the lightning grimoire closer. Give it a handshake, not a hug. He grinned and pressed his palm to the cover. The book pulsed with a clean trill, bright and fast. A thin, harmless spark ran from the edges of the pages over his fingers and dissipated like dry air touching a doorknob. He flinched once, then laughed and shook his hand out. Okay, wow, he said, eyes wide. I can feel my skin feels like it knows the weather. Good description, I said. Try a discharge. 2 fingers. Keep it small. He pointed at a pebble, focused for once in his life, and a tiny arc jumped and popped like a fingernail snapping. The pebble twitched. Wally looked like someone had handed him the keys to the candy vault. Again, he said, then stopped himself. He looked up at me. After we do the thing, I can be responsible. Robin stepped up next with no show. He placed his palm on the wind grimoire and let it take him, not the other way around. The book opened with a soft rush. A ring of air tightened around his wrist and then let go. His cape shifted like a sail catching an easy breeze, then settled. He tested in his quiet way. He lifted his heel and set it back down. No sound. He stepped to the side with more weight, the water at the edge didn't ripple where it should have. He exhaled harder through his nose and the air in front of his mask bent around the sound and softened it. That's useful, he said, which was huge praise from him. Miss Martian took a breath she didn't need and pressed her hand to light. The grimoire warmed. The glow didn't flare like it had for Clark or Lex. It smoothed out, steady and calm, like she'd smiled at it and it smiled back. A faint ring of light slid around her shoulders and then vanished. She opened her hands and a small, clear panel formed between them, neat as a window. She pushed against it very gently with both palms. It held. "I can rest my telekinesis on it," she said softly, pleased. "It feels lighter." "Exactly what we wanted," I said. Wally leaned forward to poke the panel, then thought better of it and put his hand back in his pocket. "So, can we make it official?" Robin finished. He said it like a statement instead of a question. "Let's do it," I said. I kept my tone easy, but I set my shoulders for the serious part. I don't play around with transfers. I never have. I raised a hand. The three grimoires drifted apart to give everyone space. I waited until we were all breathing in the same rhythm and then let the system do what it does, quiet and clean. The chime hit my head with 3 neat notes in a row. Transaction complete, 10 billion credited. Buyer, Robin. Wind magic transferred successfully. Transaction complete, 10 billion credited. Buyer, Kid Flash. Lightning magic transferred successfully. Transaction complete, 10 billion credited. Buyer, Miss Martian. Light magic transferred successfully. I didn't announce it. I just watched the bindings settle. Robin tested right away because it's who he is. He stepped onto a slick rock and didn't slip. He hopped down and didn't thud. He flicked 2 fingers and the sand in a tiny circle puffed without flying into anyone's face. "Wind cone works," he said. Wally bounced on his heels again and then forced himself to stop. He pointed at the tide line and drew a thin zigzag in the foam with controlled pulses, not enough to hurt a shrimp. "I am being responsible," he said proudly. Miss Martian raised her hands to shoulder height and set 3 stacked panels at a diagonal in the air. They held like shelves. She brushed her fingers over the edge of the top one and made it a little thicker. "I can see where it is even when I close my eyes," she said, testing with a small squeeze. "It has a shape separate from my mind." "Don't do more than that for an hour," I said. "Let your bodies get used to it." Aqualad and Aquaman came into the shallows, drills done. Orin gave us a once-over from a distance, measured the situation in 2 seconds, and chose not to wade into it. He spoke to Calder, then took the outer path back to the cave entrance, trident at a comfortable angle. Calder approached us calmly. "Is everything stable?" he asked, looking at hands first, then faces. "Stable," Robin said. "We kept it at low output." Calder glanced at me. I gave him a small, sunny nod. "Clean bindings. No push." He looked relieved in that very quiet way he used when he didn't want to show relief. "Good. Then you will log training time on the calendar so we can supervise your first field tests." Wally saluted with 2 fingers. "Sir, yes, sir. I will not electrify a snack machine without clearance." Miss Martian smiled, amused. "You should not electrify a snack machine at all." "Noted," Wally said, chastened and still grinning. Robin walked a small circle, letting the wind eat his footfalls. He looked up at Calder. "You'll want to see what this does for infiltration drills. It's like a built-in sound blanket." "Schedule it," Calder said. "And you will respect your limits. New tools do not replace training." "Understood," Robin said. Wally made his best serious face. "Limits respected." "Totally." Calder looked at me last. "You remain near the coast." "For a little," I said. "I have a few shipments to watch. Then I'll be elsewhere." He absorbed that without comment. Thank you for not interfering at the docks. I had popcorn, I said happily. You didn't need me. He nodded once and moved to walk Aquaman's route back toward the cave, leaving the four of us to breathe for a moment. Wally took the lid off the cookie tin. The smell of chocolate and something faintly minty drifted up. He looked at Miss Martian like she had just saved his life. You are my hero. She laughed. You say that every time I bake. I mean it every time, he said around the first bite. Robin didn't take one. He turned his head toward the cave entrance like he was listening for a signal only he could hear. Then he looked back at me. Batman's going to ask me why I did this, he said. And I'm going to tell him the truth. I recommend it, I said. He respects clean answers. Wally swallowed and wiped crumbs off his gloves. He's also going to say a lot of things about responsibility and choices and, like, funding requests. We're ready for that. Miss Martian put the tin down and dusted her hands. We will train first. That will help. Robin shook his arms out, getting used to how the air moved around his jacket. We'll log everything. If it becomes a problem, we'll adjust. It won't, I said. You three are good at understanding where your edges are. That's why I brought these three to you in the first place. Wally pointed at me with a cookie. You say that like you knew we'd bite. I did, I said, smiling. He took another bite because of course he did. We spent the next hour doing safe, boring drills. Wally practiced drawing a line of charge along wet sand and discharging it harmlessly into a ground point that I placed with a stone nail. He kept his hands steady the whole time, which impressed me more than anything. Robin tested his wind cone at different volumes and figured out how to make it eat the squeak his boots made on dry rock without making him slide. Miss Martian built 3-panel shields and layered a light dome over the top like a translucent umbrella, then set them down and picked them up again until her arms stopped tensing at the wrong moment. They ran out of novelty fast and settled into the quiet part of learning, where people breathe and repeat small movements without chasing thrills. I like that part best. It tells me what a buyer will be in a month, not just what they can be in the next 5 minutes. After a while, Calder returned with a neat slate and wrote down time blocks for supervised tests. He didn't micromanage. He gave them lanes and trusted them to stay in them. Robin accepted the slate like it weighed a pound. Wally peeked at the times and groaned for effect. Miss Martian nodded like she appreciated the structure. I put my shoes back on and brushed sand off my cuffs. The grimoires dimmed and settled close. My head felt clear in that way it does after a clean deal, when no one screamed and no one tried to be clever. Wally finished another cookie and set the tin lid on, finally satisfied. Okay, he said. I feel good about this. Responsible good. Write that down, Robin said. I want to remember this moment forever. Miss Martian laughed. I can remind you. He smiled at her. You always do. I looked out at the water. The columns were gone. The surface had smoothed back to its regular hush. Somewhere under that, a king was testing a heavy form and letting it dissolve before it hurt his wrist. That made me happier than I expected. All right, I said, clapping once. I'll get out of your hair. You've got drills, lectures, and probably a stern conversation pending. Robin shrugged. We get those anyway. Wally pointed at his hair again. Still intact. Miss Martian gave me a small bow of her head. Thank you for the cookies compliment. It was sincere, I said. Robin's mask lenses tilted as he looked me over one last time. You going to sell any more today? Not here, I said. I don't poach on training time. Good, he said. We'll see you around. Count on it, I said. I stepped back, let the wind pick up around my ankles just enough to keep the sand off my cuffs, and waved at all three of them. Wally waved back with both hands. Miss Martian returned it with her neat, careful movement. Robin didn't wave. He nodded. It meant more anyway. I walked the rock path up to the road and listened to the tide. The day had that clean feeling that comes after you do something useful without making a mess. I don't get those every day. I appreciate them when I do. The system gave one last quiet ping, not for money, just for housekeeping. Bindings verified. New pathways available, wind acoustic dampening, lightning static routing, light panel reinforcement. Nice, I said happily. I can work with that. I headed toward the bus stop at a lazy pace, hands in my pockets, jacket catching the breeze. Behind me, down on the sand, Robin made the beach go quiet, Wally popped a pebble again and whooped softly at himself, and Mgan built a light panel and leaned on it like she had always known how. Good day. Chapter 18, Wards and Terms. I got off the bus 2 blocks from the Justice League Embassy in New York and took a minute to fix my collar. The afternoon had that city noise that never really stops, and I liked it. I crossed the street with the crowd, kept my hands out where any cameras could see them, and stopped at the outer gate long enough to let the security lenses get a clean look at my face. Visitor, I said happily to the nearest intercom. Shredder. I'm here for a technical meeting with Zadara. Chaperone approved. The speaker clicked softly. A calm synthetic voice answered. State the purpose of your visit. Containment and deactivation protocols for seized grimoires, I said. Temporary, non-transferable demonstration under supervision. No sales. The gate's lock buzzed. A panel slid aside. Red Tornado stepped out, cape hanging straight, eyes lit in steady amber. He took me in with one efficient sweep, then nodded once. Your description matches the appointment, he said evenly. Follow me. You will keep your hands where I can see them. Gladly, I said, raising them shoulder high like I was practicing for a polite robbery. He turned and led the way inside. The lobby was quiet. No displays, no tours, just clean lines and staff who pretended not to stare. Red Tornado moved without wasted motion, and the air around him was cooler by a few degrees. He brought me to a side elevator, keyed in a pattern with his fingertip, and faced me again as the doors shut. Your recent activities have generated concern, he said. That sounds right, I replied cheerfully. I generate a lot of things. His eyes narrowed a fraction. You will keep your tone respectful with Zadara. I respect talent, I said. He has plenty. The elevator opened into a smaller hall with reinforced doors every 10 feet. The floor had inlaid metal strips arranged in tight grids, and I could feel a faint hum climbing up through my shoes. Red Tornado stopped at the third door. There are layered wards and physical dampers in the next room, he said. You will not attempt to bypass them. If you experience discomfort, you will state it aloud. I'll sing it if you want, I said. But I'll start with words. He didn't smile. The door slid open. Giovanni Zadara stood at the far table, sleeves rolled, tie loosened a notch, hair combed back. He looked like he had been working for an hour and planned to work for 3 more. A thin chalk ring circled the center of the room, and a set of silvered tools lay in neat lines on a cloth. The air felt tight in a careful way, like all the parts knew their jobs. Zadara looked up. His gaze was steady, polite, and not friendly. Thank you, Red Tornado. We will proceed. Red Tornado inclined his head and stepped to a wall panel. He didn't leave. He folded his arms and watched. I lifted a hand in greeting. Appreciate the invite. Zadara didn't bother with small talk. You said you would demonstrate containment protocols for the volumes that have entered circulation. We will discuss the theory, and you will show me what you claim. Sounds good, I said. I took 2 steps in and stopped just outside the chalk ring. You want a specific specimen? He gestured to a sealed, smoked glass case on a wheeled stand. Gotham forwarded one. You know which? I knew. I could feel it through the bag. The pulse was faint and stubborn, the way a fly taps a window that won't open. Cranes, I said. Good choice. It fought. Oracle informed me of the scene, Zatara said. He didn't raise his voice. You will keep your explanations clear. I have limited time. Understood, I said happily. Do you want me inside your circle? You will not cross the ring, he said. The ring will move to accommodate the work. You will state each step before you begin it. Deal, I said. He lifted his right hand and spoke a short word that made the chalk line brighten, then loosen like a belt. It expanded 2 feet, stopped, and held. He rolled the case to the edge and set it so the valves faced him. He glanced to Red Tornado, who tapped the wall. 3 projectors dropped from the ceiling and lit the table in neutral white. A camera light winked on in the corner. Zatara looked back to me. Begin. I took a breath and set my tone to practical. Step 1. Identify whether the book is actively bound to a living will in the room. If yes, stop. If no, proceed. Method, he said. 3 methods, I answered. 1. Look. You can see the veins in the cover grow brighter when it recognizes a linked buyer. This one's dim. 2. Exposure. Show it hands and see if it leans. It won't, because the buyer's not here. 3. Signature match. If you have tracked resonance from a previous incident, compare. Yours should show Gotham's incident marks. But not a live thread. Zatara turned his hand slowly. The chalk at the edge of the case flickered and then steadied. It is unbound in this room. Step 2, I said. Confirm the bag is intact and the clamp hasn't slipped. He glanced at the seams. It is intact. Step 3, I said. You will not open the bag fully. You will open the valve a quarter turn to bleed off pressure. If the veins pulse hard or the air tastes metallic, you will close it immediately and let your scrubbers run for 30 seconds. He turned the valve with an even hand. A breath of air left the bag with a small hiss. No pulse. No taste shift. He closed it again. Step 4, I said. Reinforce the hinge. It's already cracked. You will use a carbon barb clamp so it doesn't chew through your line. He picked up the correct tool without looking for it and slid it under the spine. He turned a screw until the barb seated. The grimoire flexed a fraction and then went still. Zatara watched for 2 seconds longer, then nodded once. Proceed. Step 5, grounding, I said. This is the part most people skip. You will give the book a path to discharge form without allowing it to recruit water or air. You will use a dry sink, a material that drinks structured flows without carrying them. Your chalk ring can do it if you speak it. Or you can set a block yourself. He looked at me for the first time like I had said something that mattered. He turned to the ring. Rian rak dna d nyorg, en retine. The chalk brightened, then dimmed. The hum in the floor shifted. He tested it with 2 fingers and seemed satisfied. Step 6, I said. Explain to your room what is going to happen so it doesn't overcorrect. I know that sounds like nonsense. It isn't. Your wards are smart. They respond to violent changes with violent dampening. We're not doing violence. We're closing a door that someone propped open with stubbornness and chemistry. His mouth thinned, but he didn't argue. He faced the chalk and spoke in a tired, clean tone. Ekelpsit, dineta. Onda ni, Onachua, Onachua, Onachua. Onachuati. The light steadied. The air eased half a degree. Good, I said. Step 7, I will touch the bag with a gloved hand. No bare skin. You will watch the veins. If they brighten, you will pull the ring in 2 inches and stiffen it. Proceed, he said. I stepped to the edge, lifted the clamp's corner by the sealed plastic, and pressed down once. The veins didn't brighten. They dulled. It was the same behavior I saw when a book realized it was not the dominant will in the room. Zadara noted it in silence. Step 8, I said. We go for the hinge. You will not open to the middle. You will not let it flip itself. You will keep it half open and pinch the hinge with the clamp while I pass a null across the joint. Red Tornado's eyes brightened a notch. Define null. Dead air, I said. Not vacuum. Clean absence. You can fake it with non-reactive gas if your wards don't do nulls. This room does nulls. Zadara angled his head slightly. How can you tell? Your floor hum, I said. It has a gap. That gap is null. He didn't respond. He took the clamp with his left hand and tilted the book inside the bag so the hinge faced the ceiling. He didn't rush. He gave me a look that said he would see every move I made. I lifted my right hand and called for light, but I kept it dim. The grimoire hovered over my shoulder, pages still shut. I didn't open it. I didn't need the room to react to a full show. I shaped a set of flat panels the size of a postcard and stacked them into a narrow block. I slid that block gently along the plastic, over the hinge, and let the light drink the noise the book was making as it tried to move. Zadara narrowed his eyes. You are using the light volume to absorb form. Exactly, I said quietly. Not to shine. To smother shape. He pinched the hinge harder with the clamp. The book flexed once, then twice, then settled into a slow fight like a man who knows he's handcuffed and doesn't want to admit it. I pushed the light block a little deeper, felt the resistance, and stayed there. I didn't force it. I waited. Zadara watched the veins. He watched my posture. He looked at the ring and listened to the floor hum. He knew what to watch. That made my work easier. Step 9, I said. We mark the serial. There is a pattern in the page that repeats across all volumes made by the same hand. You won't see it with regular sight. You won't see it with the usual detection spells because they get bored and flatten it. You will see it if you look for stutter marks in the margin where the ink should be smooth. He lifted his right hand. Was et nigram nama. The bag's surface looked the same to me. Zadara saw more. His gaze tracked 3 short sections and stopped. He didn't smile. He didn't give me credit. He filed it. Step 10, I said. You ask the room to remember the serial. Not the book. The serial. You do not bind the room to me. You bind it to the pattern. He nodded once, as if he had already planned to do this part. Remember, more. Fnirp et, tun et kub. The chalk pulsed once in a clean ring and steadied. Step 11, I said. Close. Do not slam. Do not force. You will crank the clamp 2 turns, then you will ask the hinge to give you the rest. Zadara did not like asking. I could see it in his jaw. He turned the clamp 2 smooth turns anyway, then breathed in, then spoke 3 words in a low tone. The hinge moved. It didn't snap. It rolled 1 notch and then held. Again, I said softly. 2 turns. He turned. He spoke. The hinge gave up another notch. The veins dulled a shade more. The fight under my light block eased. Red Tornado didn't shift his stance. He watched without blinking. The projectors buzzed once, corrected their brightness, and stayed set. We repeated the half-turn process until the book lay flat in the bag. Zadara held the clamp for 1 count more, then released a fraction of pressure. The book didn't pop open. It lay still. Step 12, I said. Seal. Full double bag. Vent to dry sink. Store in a cradle that doesn't amplify resonance. Your vault knows the right settings. Don't use the same shelf as relics that hum. Zadara exhaled evenly. He didn't look relieved. He looked busy. You will write those settings. You will not leave out steps. I'll write them, I said happily. I won't leave out anything. He tightened the outer bag, logged a tag with a small wand, and pushed the case back a foot. The chalk ring shrank on its own to its original line and dimmed. The floor hum returned to baseline. Good, he said, almost to himself. He faced me again. Now show me a deactivation procedure. I raised both hands an inch. I said demonstration under supervision, not deactivation inside your building. You can decommission one if you want, but you'll want Zaydana here, Fate on call, and 3 League members with fire suppression ready. Also a priestess from the Tower of Fate if you can get one without moving the helm. His eyes cooled a degree. You are stalling. I am not stalling, I said, still cheerful but firmer. I am giving you the safety list. I will show you steps. You will not do them here. This room is strong. It is not the tower. Red Tornado said nothing. Zadara studied my face for a long second. He wasn't reading my mind. He was reading my posture, my shoulders, my breathing, the corners of my eyes. He lowered his chin a fraction. Outline it, he said. I nodded. Deactivation has 3 gates. Gate 1, you must break the book's confidence without breaking its spine. We just did the gentle version. For deactivation you take it further. You keep it closed for a full hour while a neutral space refuses it attention. No magic tricks. No speeches. Just refusal. You will be tempted to press. Do not press. You bore it. Red Tornado finally spoke. You anthropomorphize the artifact. Do not do that. It helps mortals behave, I said. If you prefer, call it a self-sustaining form engine that responds to attention. Same result. Zadara gestured. Gate 2. Gate 2, you replace the buyer's binding with a false load, I said. Not a person. A container. You tie the serial to a vault mark that doesn't belong to anyone. You do that with your own tools so you can undo it later if you must. That is the only time you bend the room. You bend it to accept the serial as inventory rather than agreement. He absorbed that with no sign. Gate 3. Gate 3, you chill the hinge to locking temperature, then warm it slowly while it hears nothing, I said. When it opens, it will try to reassert. You let it speak 1 page and then you close it again. You do this 3 times. If it still speaks on the 4th, you will call it a loss and you will stop for the day. If it goes quiet on the 3rd, you will seal it. He looked at the bag, then at me again. Have you completed a full deactivation? Yes, I said. 4. 3 in my hands. 1 under supervision in a place with a better roof than this. He didn't ask where. He didn't need to. He glanced to Red Tornado. Red Tornado's eyes dimmed and brightened again, like a blink. Zadara walked to a second table and pulled a leather folio from a shelf. He opened it and took out a blank sheet. He set a pen down. He gestured at the page. Write your 12 steps and your 3 gates. You will include the dry sink composition and the cradle parameters. I stepped to the edge of the table and waited. He didn't invite me over the ring. He slid the paper across with 2 fingers until it touched my side of the chalk. I stayed outside and wrote with care. No flourishes, no extra words, no skip steps. I put the cradle's resonance tolerance down to the range most rooms miss and noted that dampers should not share a breaker with wards that hum on odd intervals. He read while I wrote. He didn't comment. When I finished, I set the pen down and leaned back. He waited one beat more in case I remembered a step. I didn't. He rolled the page up, slid it into the folio, and tied the strap. Now the demonstration, he said. You claimed you could show containment behavior without sale. You will do so with a safe volume, under my rules. Light? I asked. Or wind? Wind, he said. Light interacts unpredictably with one of the ceiling layers. Wind it is, I said. I lifted the green volume from my shoulder and held it out where he could see my hands clearly. Temporary access only. No transfer. No binding. I'll keep the layer shallow enough that your wards can swallow it if you tell them to. He raised his right hand. Come on a talozi p, drowsa p. The room's air thickened. The chalk brightened and then faded to a steady line again. You will make a pressure cone that keeps spilled powder from dispersing while allowing breath, he said. Then you will produce a directional shear that can separate water from oil without a centrifuge. After that, you will dampen a footfall. Clear, I said. I opened the Wind Grimoire one page. I did not let it flip. I shaped a narrow cone in the air above the table and brought a small vial of safe test powder out of my pocket. I cracked the seal, tipped it, and let half a teaspoon fall. The cone held the grains in a clean column that didn't spread. I put my palm in the cone and breathed in. The air flowed around my hand without choking. I pulled my hand out and closed the vial. Zadara watched my fingers, not the powder, like a man who knows where real mistakes start. He nodded once. Second task. I moved to the other side of the ring where a shallow tray sat half full of seawater. Zadara fetched a small bottle of lamp oil from a shelf and poured a thin line into the pan. The oil spread. I formed a plane at the surface, angled it, and drew the thinnest possible shear across. The oil moved into a clear band against the tray's lip. The water didn't cloud. I kept the shear steady for 1 minute, then stopped and let the plane dissolve. Third, he said. I walked to the chalk line and stood with 1 foot inside, 1 foot out. I lifted a light pressure film under my boot and took 1 step. The sole made contact with the floor without the hard edge of a heel strike. I stepped again with more weight and kept the sound small. I stepped a third time fast and the room still heard less than it should have. Zadara watched and counted under his breath. He lifted a hand to the ceiling. Pots. The wards cancelled my wind film. I let them. He made a note in his head. Enough, he said. Close it. I closed the book and let the room breathe on its own. The hum dropped to normal. The chalk quivered once and went still. He stood very still for several seconds, then faced Red Tornado. Your logs have everything. Yes, Red Tornado said. Multiple backups complete. Zadara returned his attention to me. You have sold to friends and enemies. You will continue. I cannot stop you here and now. I can only increase our safety. I came to help with that, I said cheerfully. I am not allergic to belt and suspenders. Do not joke, he said flatly. Noted, I said. I kept my hands open and empty at my sides. Do you want a field kit for your vault staff? I can assemble one under observation. You keep it. It won't bind to anyone. What would it include? He said. 3 clamps with carbon barbs in different sizes, I said. 2 dry sink pucks for emergency spills. 4 double bags with valves that don't seize. 6 cryo pellets that don't snap if they get bumped. A written card with the 12 steps and the 3 gates without the parts only you can do. Zadara looked to Red Tornado. Red Tornado blinked his eyes again. I can fabricate most elements. The pucks require material not in our stores. I'll bring pucks to the door, I said. No drama. No signature required. Zadara weighed that for a long beat. He gave one short nod. Do so. You will not step beyond the lobby without escort. Understood, I said. He closed the folio, set it aside, and brushed the chalk ring with his shoe. The line dimmed to a normal white and stopped humming. He moved the Gotham case to a second ring, spoke a word, and sealed it there. We are done, he said. You will not approach the Tower of Fate. I don't, I said. That house doesn't like me. He didn't flinch. Good. He turned to Red Tornado. Escort him out. I will forward the notes to those who need them. Red Tornado stepped to the door. I looked at Zadara one more time. If you ever need to see how a full deactivation looks, I will stand outside the tower and talk you through mine while yours watches. I won't touch your circle. You will keep everyone safe. He held my gaze without blinking. If that day comes, it will not be because of you. Fair, I said. I hope it doesn't come. Red Tornado led me back to the elevator. We rode down in silence. On the lobby level, the doors opened to the same quiet space. He walked me to the exterior doors. I stopped with my hands still out. You are not disliked, he said, which for him sounded like he had borrowed a human sentence and used it correctly. You are distrusted. That tracks, I said happily. I can live with distrusted. He looked at my face, then at my hands, then at the sidewalk. Do not give Zadara cause to move you to the tower. I won't, I said. I like my head where it is. He didn't answer. He opened the outer panel. I stepped through. The door closed without a hiss. I stood on the sidewalk for a second and let the city noise wash back over me. The air felt warmer out here. I rocked on my heels, cracked my neck, and smiled to myself. That went better than it could have. No alarms. No improvisation. No fire. I headed toward the corner, already making a list in my head. Pucks, clamps, bags, pellets, cards. I could have them ready by nightfall if I stayed focused. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed with a short, clean tone that wasn't a sale tone. I glanced at the screen. Bindings verified, Robin Wind, Kid Flash Lightning, Miss Martian Light. Advisory, Gotham Resonance Pattern updated. Advisory, Bloodhaven serial match detected on a river manifest. I tucked the phone away and lengthened my stride. I didn't run. I didn't need to yet. I reached the bus stop as a bus pulled in and climbed aboard with exact change. I sat by the window and tapped my fingers on my knee, counting seconds. I liked the feel of a plan I could finish before dark. Chapter 19, Mid-Harbor Intercept. The bus dropped me near the Bloodhaven Pier where the air always smelled like old rope and diesel. I liked it. The noise covered conversations without anyone having to try. I checked the time, adjusted my jacket, and walked along the edge of the marina until I reached the small craft rentals. A man behind a faded counter looked up from his phone long enough to decide I didn't scare him, then returned to pretending he had no boats. I'll take the 24-foot pilot, I said cheerfully, pointing at a stubby utility boat with scuffed paint and a stubborn profile. He squinted. You got a license? 2, I said, smiling. Local and coastal. You can check if you like. He sighed, took my card, and glanced at the name as if he planned to forget it immediately. Back before midnight. I'll aim for early, I said. I signed the forms, took the keys, and stepped onto the deck. The pilot boat smelled like salt and hot plastic. I liked that too. I pulled the lines, nudged the throttle, and pointed the bow toward the river mouth. The afternoon wind pushed against my shoulder in steady beats. Water slapped the hull in short, even taps. I let it talk. It never lies. Half a mile out, the water grimoire rose from my bag and settled near my right hip. The cover rippled once, patient. Wind floated to the other side, a quiet green with its pages closed. Darkness hung low, almost touching the deck, as if it preferred the shade of the gunwale. "We're meeting a barge," I said, keeping my tone casual. "Mid-harbor waypoint. I want the name before it hits shore." The books didn't answer. They didn't need to. I eased the throttle to keep the motor noise under the gulls and schemed along the edge of the channel markers. A tug muscled a stack of empty containers toward Gotham Bay to my left. A deep draft bulk carrier held station farther out. I checked the manifest ping again on my phone. Clean, short, annoyingly vague. Waypoint, 40 degrees 3811 N, 74 degrees 039 W. Arrival window, 15:10:15:30. Cargo, sealed drums. Broker, redacted. Cute, I said happily. Redactions always make people feel important. The chop evened out as the channel widened. I shaped a small wind cone over the motor to keep the sound low and let the boat ride smoother. The cone took almost no effort now. I breathed with it and kept my hands light on the wheel. The river opened to a grey field with 100 small ripples. Seagulls screamed at nothing. A police skiff sat 200 yards off, idle, crew eyes half on, half off. They weren't here for me. Good. I reached the waypoint with 5 minutes to spare and killed the throttle. The hull rocked twice and settled. I set water to extend a thin line beneath the surface like a finger testing a door seam. It felt the current and brought back a picture in pressure instead of color, nothing heavy inbound yet, some small craft outside the lane, a lazy tanker 2 miles off, and one slow push coming up from the south hugging the shadow of the industrial shore. "There you are," I said softly. I put my jacket hood up to cut the wind and watched the southern line. The push resolved into shape a low barge with tarps, a small tug pushing from behind. The bow wore a painted name that had been painted over twice. The tarp straps were new. The deckhands had the wrong posture for union guys. Too stiff. Eyes wrong, not bored enough. I let darkness climb my shoes and spread like thicker shade over the deck. It didn't cloak the boat, it muffled me. My pulse steadied. My voice would carry less if I spoke. I didn't plan to speak loudly. I flipped on the pilot boat's small radio and tuned to the channel used for routine passages. The tug didn't check in. Wrong. Either the skipper wanted quiet or he wanted cover from someone else's call sign. I tapped the wheel with my thumb and smiled to myself. "All right," I said, happy anyway. "Let's go say hi." I bumped the throttle enough to drift into the tug's wake at a lazy angle. The barge crew noticed. One pointed. The other adjusted a strap and pretended not to care. Their shoulders didn't match their faces. I raised my left hand, palm out friendly boat language and kept coming. The tug's pilot stepped out of his wheelhouse for a look. He wore a cap pulled low and a jacket 3 sizes too big. His eyes found me and slid off, then came back and stayed. He lifted a hand, then touched his ear, then went back inside. "Calling someone," I said quietly. "Good." My phone buzzed with a short tone. I glanced down. Serial echo detected, match Bloodhaven Dock Seizure X2. "Same supplier," I said, cheerful in a small way. "Let's get a signature." I steered a gentle curve and let the pilot boat ease alongside the barge without touching. I stood on the gunwale and balanced, rocking with the water like I'd been doing it all my life. One of the deckhands stepped to the edge with his hands open. He looked 20. His beard hadn't made up its mind yet. He tried on a hard face and didn't wear it well. "Private passage," he said. Clear the lane. Lane's public, I said, friendly. I like your tarps. He didn't have a reply ready. The other hand, the one with the more dangerous posture, reached into his jacket. I shook my head. Don't, I said. We're just chatting. The dangerous one paused, then kept his hand where it was. Smart enough. The tug's pilot leaned out his window again. State your business, he called. Looking for a name, I said, happy. That's all. Wrong boat, he said, and he meant it for the recorders. Maybe, I said. But maybe not. A small shape came out from under the tarp at midship, low, light, confident. She landed on the railing like she'd been born on a line and let the water lift her, then settle her exactly where she needed to be. Mask over the eyes, hair black and cut in a clean sweep. She watched me for 2 heartbeats, then smiled without showing teeth. Cheshire. Curious, she said lightly. You keep turning up where the water moves. I put my hands out, palms empty. I like boats. You like prices, she said. I like both, I said cheerfully. Hi, Jade. The younger hand flinched at the name. The dangerous one didn't. Cheshire tilted her head a degree. Do we know each other? We share a buyer or two, I said. You also have a good tailor. She let that pass without comment. She glanced at the tug's pilot house, then back to me. You're in the way. I'm not in your way, I said. I'm in mine. I want the buyer's name. Do you? She said, amused. Names cost money. I bring my own, I said. Sometimes I bring books. Her eyes warmed a notch. And here I thought the rumors were just for gulls. They eat everything, I said, smiling. I prefer a menu. She walked along the railing without looking down. The water pushed at her ankle and she adjusted without thinking. The deckhands stared like they wanted to be that steady someday. She stopped 5 feet from me, balanced on a cleat like it was built for her. What do you want exactly? She said. Verification, I said. And a talk. Talk to who? She said. Your buyer, I said. Mid-Harbor is a bad place to make new friends, but I'm friendly. She held my eyes a second longer, then looked past me to the open water. A black shape schemed low to port, no lights, sharp bow, quiet engine. The kind of boat you rent with a number from a phone nailed to a wharf under a bridge. Of course, I said, still cheerful. He would be punctual. The speedboat drew alongside the barge with practiced ease. 2 men in dark jackets rose from behind the windscreen. One stayed with the wheel, the other carried a hard case like it held something he didn't trust to anyone. He reached for a rope without asking and tossed a loop over a bollard. Cheshire didn't introduce anyone. She didn't need to. The case carrier turned and I saw the jawline and the careful eyes that never stopped measuring distance. His smile was friendly on purpose rather than by habit. Sportsmaster. The mask wasn't on. He wanted faces and he wanted people to read his confidence. He took 1 clean step onto the barge and didn't wobble. He set the case down and looked at me like he already had my height and reach memorized. You picked a short stage, I said happily. He took his time with the reply. You're the salesman. I sell, I said. I also interrupt when interruption pays. He chuckled once. Fair. He didn't look at Cheshire. She didn't look at him. That told me enough about who was contracting who. He gestured at the tarps with a small flick of his wrist. You want a name, he said. Here's one. Delivery goes to Ogden Logistics at Pier 7. Paperwork says cleaning solvents. Security says nothing at all. Ogden's new, I said. Shell on a shell. You do your homework, he said. I do enough to stay paid, I said. He tapped the hard case with 2 fingers. You didn't come to talk tarps. You came to talk catalogs. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I came to make sure no one drowns in a stupid way before dinner. He glanced at the water, then at my shoes. You're covered. I like staying that way, I said, cheerful. So. You picked a broker with a decent phone voice. You've got a schedule. You're early because you don't let small craft traffic push you off your times. Good. I've got a very narrow window to ask a very particular question. He waited. Are you buying, or are you moving for someone else? I said. Cheshire's eyes flicked, the smallest movement. Sportsmaster didn't take the bait. I'm moving. For who? I said. I don't tell, he said pleasantly. Try, I said. He wiped a bead of spray off the case with the edge of his glove. Sure. Tell me the difference it makes to you. It tells me if I'm talking to the hand or the head, I said. And whether I should show you something now or later. He smiled again, still friendly, still deliberate. You show me now, I pay now. That's how talking stops wasting time. Tempting, I said, and it was. But not here. He lifted a shoulder and let it fall. Then you're wasting mine. Cheshire watched me without blinking, reading the small tells people miss when they're trying to sound hard. I kept my breathing even. This wasn't a fight. Not yet. Darkness hummed a little under my boots anyway, like it was ready to be a blanket if I fell. I can tell you what you want to know without taking anyone's money, I said. Your buyer has 3 crates waiting on Pier 7 with the wrong weights on the labels. They're bait. There's a camera in one and a tracker in another. If you bring this barge to berth the way you planned, your face will be very popular. Sportsmaster's eyes didn't change, but the muscles along his jaw twitched once. Source. Someone with a long coat and a mustache who rolls bad coffee between his fingers, I said. Someone who doesn't like paperwork when he can avoid it. He told a friend to tell a friend. I'm the friend. He laughed for real this time, short and quiet. You're a tour guide and a gossip. I'm a seller who prefers customers with long life expectancy, I said lightly. Cheshire looked out at the police skiff 200 yards off. It hadn't moved. The crew pretended to watch something else, which meant they were doing their jobs. She made the smallest calculation with her eyes and finished it. What exactly do you want for the advice? She asked. A name, I said. She gave me one without blinking. Ogden isn't buying. Ogden is a paper mouth. The check clears from Lansdowne Capital through 2 banks that don't exist by sunrise. Sportsmaster didn't stop her. He had already done the math and decided it cost him nothing to let it out. He aimed the next line like a dart. If you're going to sell, you do it somewhere that lets everyone leave if it goes bad, he said amicably. Which is not here. Pick a place where the kid gloves can stay on. I don't wear gloves, I said, then held up my palms and grinned. Kidding. I wear gloves. He smiled like we shared a joke. We didn't. He tapped the case again. I'm not sticking around. If you want to show, you give me a window tonight. Quiet pier, no capes, no birds. You can have Jade as the chaperone if it makes you feel safer. I feel safe, I said. But I like Jade. Cheshire's mouth curved the smallest degree. Flatterer. No, I'm a realist, I said cheerfully. You kick very precisely. Sportsmaster looked past me toward the channel. A long-hull private ferry motored by at an easy clip with tourists pretending there were sights on this part of the river. He marked it and ignored it. His span of attention stayed tidy. He could afford it. He'd trained for this. I let my smile fade a notch and set my words down clean. Someone tried to seed your barge with an unhelpful amount of attention. If you don't want a camera tag, you divert now. You slide into the industrial moorings under Carter Street and pretend your tug needs a part. You wait 2 hours. Then you move under another call sign. He didn't ask how I knew the name on the ladder at Carter. He just held my eyes long enough to tell me he understood I understood. Then he made a choice. Do it, he told the tug pilot without raising his voice. The pilot leaned on the horn twice and adjusted the throttles in a way only another pilot would notice, lazy outside, precise inside. The barge's angle shifted so slowly it looked like a trick of the water. We all felt it. None of us made a show of feeling it. Cheshire balanced on her cleat and checked the straps again. Her hands were quick without looking quick. The young deckhand watched her and tried to copy the economy of motion. He failed. He looked like a kid trying to zip a backpack too full of bad ideas. I kept my tone easy. Thank you. Sportsmaster waved that off like the thanks was a gnat. Window, he said. Tonight. Name the pier, I said. Pier 31, South End, he said. No overhead lights, no security cameras that work. 2200. Reasonable, I said. You bring cash or product? Case, he said, tapping it. You bring 1 book. Not 10. Not a convoy. Cheshire watched the police skiff again. It turned a nose hair to the left just to show they weren't blind. She leaned forward just enough to lower her center of gravity when the tug slid a degree against the current, then stood straight again. I liked how she didn't overcompensate. It kept her face calm. Pier 31 at 10, I said, cheerful. I'll be there. No sales unless everyone likes the taste of the conversation. If it feels wrong, I leave. If it feels wrong to you, you leave. We don't waste each other's time. Sportsmaster accepted that with a simple nod. Keep your phone on. I'll ping before I show so you don't panic. I don't panic, I said happily. I count. He lifted the case with one hand like it weighed nothing, crossed back to the speedboat, and sat on the gunwale like a man who knew how to own a dock without paperwork. He held my eyes the way professionals shake hands. Then he looked away and gave the pilot a small signal. Carter Street, Cheshire told the tug again, just loud enough to make it official. The pilot nodded once. She looked back at me. If you bring the wrong book tonight, I'll take it out of your hands and use it on you. That seems fair, I said. You'll like the one I bring. Confident, she said. I sell, I said, smiling. I'm allowed. She stepped off the cleat, walked the railing back to midship, and vanished under the tarp like a cat slipping under a door. The young deckhand watched her go with round eyes and tried to look like he hadn't. The dangerous one finally took his hand out of his jacket and scratched his chin like it had been itchy the whole time. I gave the tug's pilot a little salute with 2 fingers and slid the pilot boat back into the barge's wake. The current caught me, then let me go. I kept the throttle low until I was clear of their line, then opened up enough to feel the hull lift. Water smoothed the chop. Wind kept the motor sound small and local. Darkness hugged my ankles and then thinned as I got distance. I didn't look back more than once. I didn't have to. My phone buzzed with a short confirmation. Serial track confirmed, Lansdowne Ogden Pier 7. Adjustment, Carter Street hold added. Good, I said quietly. Let's keep it tidy. I swung the pilot boat in a lazy loop and pointed the bow toward a forgotten strip of wharf near a seafood warehouse where the boards creaked in a way that scared children and comforted adults. I tied off, killed the engine, and sat with my hands on my knees for a minute while the harbor wind tugged at my hood. I called the number that always picked up on the second ring. Oracle, I said happily when the line opened. Quick heads up. Your friend with the mustache will sleep better if he knows his Pier 7 cameras should meet an accident before nightfall. Carter Street is about to get company. You're intercepting the barge, she said. Her voice was low and fast and not surprised. Name. Ogden on paper, Lansdowne in truth, I said. Sportsmaster moving. Cheshire brokered the line. I nudged them off the pier so your hardware doesn't catch the wrong fish. You like not catching fish, she said dryly. I like not having to drag them out of court later, I said. Tell Gordon to check the Carter ladders for wear. If they're loose, someone will fall in pretending to fix a motor. Duly noted, she said. A beat. You said a meet. Pier 31, I said. 10. I'll play nice. Define nice, she said. No explosions, I said. No capes unless they can keep their capes in their pockets. HNH, she said. I'll log it. Don't get stabbed. I'll bring cookies, I said. Don't, she said, and hung up before I could laugh. I stood, rolled my shoulders, and checked the pilot boat's lines. Everything held. The hull knocked the post with a polite little sound like it had manners. I checked the time and did the math in my head. Enough hours left to assemble what I needed, not enough to get fancy. I walked back to the rental counter and set the keys down gently. The man behind the phone looked up long enough to be surprised I hadn't run off with his boat for a week, then grunted and made a note. Back before midnight, he said, like he'd won a bet with himself. Told you, I said happily. I aim for early. I hit a cheap supply store 2 streets over and bought heavy zip ties, 2 canvas drop cloths, and a roll of tape that wouldn't leave residue. Then I swung by a lockup where I keep the boring parts, clamps, bags, pucks, pellets. I checked each for dates, scratched off the ones that felt wrong, and replaced them from the back of the shelf. I kept the pile small. I don't like carrying more than I need. For tonight, I chose one book. Not the one Sportsmaster expected. I set Earth on the bench and watched the cover for a full minute. The brown wasn't dull, it was steady. It doesn't get the applause fire does. It also doesn't smash through a pier by accident. It anchors. It holds. It shuts people down without letting them drown. It lets a cautious buyer test a cage without testing a funeral. Good evening, I said to it, light. You're the safest date. It didn't answer. It didn't need to. I put it in a case that wouldn't flash and packed the rest in a plain backpack with 2 shoulder straps that didn't squeak when I moved. I ate something that wasn't sugar, drank water, and stood under a fan until my head felt level again. I checked the time. A few hours to spare. Enough room to sit with my back against the wall and go over angles. If Sportsmaster got jumpy, Earth would hold his feet without breaking them. If Cheshire got bored, wind would keep her from dancing across a beam without an invitation. If a third party tried a fast hello from the shadows, light would give me a flat panel to lean on until the hello left. If the police skiff pretended not to be near Pier 31, I'd pretend not to see them and leave their evening unruined as long as they left mine alone. My phone buzzed again short, clean, no drama. Manifest change logged, Ogden Hold Carter ST2H. GCPD Awareness, Limited. MCU eyes shifted to River. Thank you, I said softly to no one. I zipped the pack, slung it over my shoulder, and headed out as the harbor lights began to come on in that lazy, unreliable way that makes everything softer. Time to work again. Chapter 20, Pier 31 Terms. I reached Pier 31 an hour early. The south end had 3 dead lights and a loose board that creaked if you stepped on the nail head instead of the plank. I fixed the board first. I pressed my boot down, found the quiet spot, and set a strip of tape so I wouldn't forget. I walked the length of the pier and counted the gaps between pilings. I checked the ladder rungs to make sure no one would drop into the water by accident. The river smell was strong. The wind came in steady runs that hit and eased in a clean rhythm. "All right," I said happily. "Let's stage this." Earth floated out of my bag and settled at hip height. The cover held a solid brown. It never tried to show off. I lifted both hands and shaped 2 anchors under the pier. No big forms. Just 4 flat pads pressed to the inner faces of the pilings at knee height above the waterline. I set each one firm and smooth. If someone tried to shove me toward the edge, I could plant my heel and not slip. I did the same with 2 more pads near the pier head where the ladder sat. The wood stopped feeling gritty under my sole and felt steady. Wind joined earth and waited at my right shoulder. I shaped a quiet cone along the south rail to kill echoes. I dropped a second, narrower cone around the spot where I planned to stand so my footfalls wouldn't carry. Then I put down 1 thin air cushion 5 feet behind me. If anyone rushed, I could step back and not make a sound. I kept the rest simple. No traps. No gotchas. I do business. I don't set stage magic for a meet where everyone starts at 0. I sent a short text to the one person who would add the right kind of eyes without adding noise. Me, Pier 31 set. 2200 hours. If your friend can look the other way from 2 blocks out, that would keep everyone's evening calm. Oracle, logged. MCU will not patrol that exact block between 2150 and 2220. Do not abuse this courtesy. Me, I will be polite. I zipped the phone into my inside pocket and breathed with the river. 10 minutes passed. I tightened one anchor with a thought. I adjusted the cone at my feet and made sure it didn't hum. I checked the tape mark on the quiet board again. It held. 2142. A gull landed on the piling and stared at me with one eye and then the other. I stared back until it decided I wasn't food. It left. The wind shifted. I could hear a small outboard motor 2 piers over. It wasn't coming here. Good. 2158. A low engine came in from the west. Not fast. Not shy either. The speedboat from earlier east passed the north side of the pier and circled once, respectful but not afraid. It cut power at the south end and drifted in on inertia. The bow touched light against a tire bumper. I stepped forward and set a palm on the gunnel to keep the hull from bumping twice. Cheshire rose from the deck in one clean motion and landed on the pier rail with both feet together. She didn't wobble. She wore a dark suit that fit her shoulders and knees. The mask hid her eyes from the river wind, but not from me. Her hair was tied back in a tight line. She looked at my hands first, then at my shoes, then at my face. "You're early," she said. "I like chairs," I said cheerfully. "Pier space is the same with more breeze." She stepped down from the rail and walked toward me along the outer line of the planks. Her balance stayed perfect. She stopped 2 arm lengths out. She didn't offer a hand. I didn't either. "You brought quiet," she observed. She lifted her chin toward the rail where the air felt different. "I don't like shouting," I said. She looked past me to the open pier head. "Any surprises?" "None planned," I said. "If something changes, I'll use the words." She accepted that with a small tilt of her head and paused, listening. A second engine came in from the east. Heavier. Clear. The speed never spiked. The timing stayed even. The boat showed at the corner and slid along the pier with no spray. The man at the wheel didn't look up because he didn't need to. Sportsmaster stepped across the gap before the deckhand could tie off. He carried the same hard case as before. He held it with a relaxed arm, but his hand didn't leave the handle. He set the case down by his ankle and got a clean look at my setup without turning his head. He saw the tape over the quiet board. He saw the anchors in the way my feet settled. He saw the cones in the way the wind cut around me and rejoined. He filed all of it. "You stage neat," he said. "I like not tripping," I said, smiling. He glanced at his watch. 2200. "Agreed," I said. He looked at the empty pier. "No capes in my pocket," he said, just to say it out loud. "I kept my pockets clear too," I said happily. Cheshire took up a spot at an angle where she could see both our faces and the boats behind us. She didn't stand square. She kept a foot pointed toward the water. It wasn't a threat. It was exit discipline. She took out her phone and swiped once. The screen lit her hand and then went dark. "Proceed," she said. Sportsmaster tapped the case with the toe of his shoe. "Show." I nodded and lifted Earth. I kept my voice light, but I let the serious parts stand up. "Ground rules. I demonstrate. You test the forms. No one goes in the water. No one tries to break their wrists on purpose. If something feels wrong, I stop." "Fine," he said. Cheshire folded her arms and watched my shoulders. "Keep it visible," she said. "No hidden throws." "I'll keep it at waist height," I said. I opened Earth to the first page. The grain on the cover shifted a shade. The air didn't ripple. The pier didn't groan. I formed a low wall at shin height between us and let it harden. Then I pressed the top with my palm and showed it didn't wobble. I stepped over it without moving my chest. I stepped back. "Simple brace," I said. "If you get pushed toward the edge, this gives you a line to catch. It doesn't cut. It doesn't trip. It only stops your shin at a dull angle." Sportsmaster leaned down and rapped his knuckles on the edge. He didn't hit it hard. He listened to the sound. He nodded once, then nudged it with the heel of his palm. It held. He nudged again. It held. Cheshire set her boot on the top and pressed. The wall didn't move. She took her foot away. "Next," she said. I dissolved the wall and brought up two cuffs the width of a thumb. I set them on the pier, open. "Non-lethal bind," I said. "It closes to the ankle and the wrist. It doesn't constrict blood flow. It limits range and keeps joints safe. If the person fights, it tightens within a safe band and waits." Sportsmaster crouched. He didn't put his wrist in. He used his fingers to explore the inner surface and find the seam. He smiled a little. "No teeth." "No teeth," I said. "This isn't punishment. It's stopgap." He stood and looked at his daughter. "Try it." Cheshire sat on the edge of the pier, slipped one ankle into the cuff, and flexed. I closed it. She rolled her foot and tried to twist free. The cuff tightened to hold the ankle bones without biting. She ran her fingers over the outside and searched for a flaw. She didn't find one. She looked at me, not angry, not pleased, just measuring. "Release," she said. I released. She stood and rolled her ankle to test the blood flow. She nodded to her father. "Holds." Sportsmaster pointed at the ladder. "Edge case." I obliged. I shaped a bend at ladder rung height and set it between the last rung and the pier face. "If someone slips," I said, "this gives them a second to grab. It dissolves if weight exceeds safe load, so it won't turn into a trap." He stepped to the ladder, leaned out, and gripped the bend with two hands. His body weight pressed into it. It held for a half-second and then gave. He let go before it could dump him. He reached out with a long arm and grabbed the rung like he had planned that path since he was 10. He pulled himself back and didn't smirk. Safe enough, he said. Now pressure, I said. I brought up a waist-high block between us and let him hit it. He didn't wind up. He didn't show muscle. He extended his arm with controlled speed and sank a precise fist into the block. The surface gave just enough to absorb the blow, then pushed back. He hit again at a slightly different angle. He wasn't trying to break it. He wanted to know how it behaved when someone like him used it. He exhaled once. Acceptable. Cheshire tested with her heel. She brought it down in a clean drop, putting the weight exactly where she wanted it. The block held. She glanced down at the anchor under my left heel and then at the thin cushion behind me. She knew what each thing did. I have questions, she said. Ask, I said. Weight transfer, she said. If I put someone against that block and then switch to a cuff, do you lose cohesion? No, I said. You can step from one form to another without dead space. The form shifts the load to the new shape and drops the old one. Duration, she said. How long can you hold a cuff at safe tension if the target rails against it? Hours, I said. But you shouldn't. You cuff to stop a move, then you hand to whoever is supposed to take custody. Water, Sports Master said, cutting in. You pop a block under a knee on a wet deck. Does it slip? No, I said. Earth has friction. It will stick to wet wood long enough to stop a fall. It will not dump the target if you ease pressure. He picked up a metal spike from his case and pressed the tip into the block. Penetration. Controlled, I said. If you push slow, it resists. If you stab fast, it resists more. If you push too hard, it gives before it shatters. It is designed to keep everyone alive through dumb ideas. He put the spike away. He didn't bother with the case latches. He knew where each piece belonged by touch. Show the part where you keep me from moving 10 feet without hurting my knees, he said. I raised both hands. Fine. I drew a small ring at his right heel. It rose half an inch and closed over his sole without catching laces. He felt it and shifted his weight. I gave him a hair more play at the ankle to keep the joint from feeling trapped. He set his stance and tried to move a step in. The ring stuck. He tried to move a step out. The ring stuck. He lifted his heel. The ring rose with it and stopped his foot at an inch. He tested a hard jerk. I let it give half that impulse and then tighten inside safe range. He stopped before he wasted effort. Good, he said. Now release. I let go. He moved his foot a hair and then settled. Your turn, he told Cheshire. Try to kick his head and see what he does. She didn't ask if I agreed. She moved. The inside of her elbow twitched. I felt the shift and set the thin air cushion I'd staged earlier. Her heel came in clean. I lifted wind with the smallest thought and thickened the air against her ankle. The heel met the cushion and stopped 2 inches in front of my nose. She didn't overcommit. She withdrew without blinking. She looked down at the place where the cushion had been. It was gone now. That's not the same book, she said. No, I said. I gave you both the safe version of A Stop with Earth and the quiet version with wind. If I use them together, I can keep the pier floor clean of scraped skin. Sports Master reached into his case again and pulled a deck of metal cards. He flicked one into the air, caught it, and felt the balance. He didn't throw. He just smiled at me in a way that said he would enjoy trying to throw one through a block on a different day. Show a cage, he said. I set 4 low pillars around the empty space between us and raised a waist-high screen that left head and shoulders clear. I hardened the edges so it wouldn't cut skin and left the top open. I stepped into it. I pushed the screen with both hands to show it didn't bite. I pressed my shoulder against it to show it flexed instead of bruised. I stepped out and let the screen stay. Cheshire walked up to the screen and put both palms on it. She pushed with a slow increase in pressure. It held at her first effort and then eased, not to give way, but to keep the contact safe. She walked around it, checked the seam where it met the boards, and nodded once. Uses, she said. Break line of sight, I said. Stop a rush in a hallway. Give an officer a second to breathe. Keep a civilian from walking into a fight. Sportsmaster tilted his head toward the end of the pier. And if I throw someone through the top? They land on wood, I said. You don't get a free pass on gravity. This isn't a bed. He grunted, which I took as a sign of respect for gravity, if not for me. Cheshire looked out at the river. The speedboat behind her bumped once. The deckhand settled it with a short motion of the rope. She traced the air with one finger, mapping the cones she felt and noting where my quiet zones started and ended. She kept track without writing anything down. Price, she said. 10 billion, I said. No bundles, no coupons, no staged payments. Sportsmaster scratched the back of his neck. You keep a consistent line. Consistency keeps my days clean, I said. Buyer identity, Cheshire said. If we buy, do you care who we deliver to? I care where, I said. If the handoff is in a school zone at noon, I walk. If the handoff is in a dead warehouse with fire suppression and 3 exits, I stay. If the buyer shows a habit of aiming for heads, I raise the price. If the buyer shows a habit of leaving bodies, I decide case by case. If your buyer is the one I think it is, I want the room to have certain safety lines painted before I agree. Sportsmaster smiled like I had said a joke he liked. You think you know the buyer? I'm not blind, I said, still cheerful. Lansdowne holds a lot of special interest for a fund with no public presence. He nodded. He didn't confirm. He didn't have to. Terms, he said. If I pay, I walk with the book. I don't sign forms. I don't pose for cameras. I don't call a friend to co-sign. You can keep your comments to your own head. Agreed, I said. But you do bring one thing. Name it, he said. A space with 4 walls and a floor that won't cave, I said. And a doctor who knows what a tendon looks like. Not because I plan to hurt anyone. Because people do dumb things when they get excited. Cheshire almost smiled. You are honest about that. Everyone gets excited, I said. I like keeping knees intact. Sportsmaster tapped the case again and considered. He looked at his daughter. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She watched him and let him think. He returned his gaze to me. You sell this to me, he said. What stops me from walking to a place you don't like and passing it along to someone you wouldn't? You don't tell me where you walk, I said. You don't tell me who you lift with. I don't put trackers in my books. I do put eyes in my head. If I see the book used in a way that gets the wrong kind of people dead and a city block torched, I stop selling to you. Not a threat. Business. He nodded once, not insulted. You run on rules. I like sleeping, I said. He set the case down and opened it this time. Inside sat 2 rows of neat bricks wrapped in clean tape and a steel cylinder capped with a combination dial. He lifted one brick and set it on the pier. He lifted another and set it beside the first. He didn't count aloud. He counted with his fingers. He set down the cylinder last. Case, he said. Not a commitment. A downstroke on a promise if you like how the handoff looks. Delivery would be in 2 hours. Carter Street, under the camera that does not work. He didn't move his eyes from my face while he stacked the money. His hands didn't shake. The deckhand watched the stack with a look he tried to hide. Cheshire watched the deckhand. You want earth, I said. Not fire. Not lightning. Not darkness. Earth will let a worker hold a line and will not turn a simple crate grab into a funeral. He cocked his head. You selling a conscience now? No, I said. I sell tools that match a job. You two know how to fight. Your buyer pays other people to push boxes. They need a brace, not a blowtorch. Cheshire's eyes softened 0.5 millimeter. Practical, she said. Always, I said happily. Sportsmaster closed the case. He didn't lock it. He pushed it with his boot so it sat exactly parallel to the pier edge. He enjoyed alignment. I respected that. Demonstration complete, he said. Window on decision is short. Tonight short. I'm here, I said. He held my gaze for a 3 count. Then he lifted the case, turned, stepped back onto the speedboat, and sat with the lazy strength of a man who worked hard to make moves look easy. He didn't look away from me until the boat pushed off and drifted 2 feet. Then he looked at his daughter. She moved to join him without a word. She paused at the rail. If you sell to us, sell the one you showed. That was the plan, I said. She gave me one last, unreadable look. Good night. They pushed off. The engine caught with a low growl. The speedboat moved away from the pier without drama. It kept a straight line until the river turned them into a lick of shadow by the old ferry slips. Then it vanished. I stood where I was and let the cones dissolve. I drew the anchors back into the pilings. The tape on the quiet board stayed, just in case I had to come back. My shoulders loosened. My jaw eased. I checked the time. 22:42. I sent one more short text. Meet done. No sail yet. Earth pitched. 2-hour window for handoff at Carter. If MCU wants that camera to keep not working, now is a good time. Oracle, logged. MCU will be busy with a stolen van 3 blocks away. You started that, didn't you? Me, I did not. Oracle, don't lie to my face. Me, it wasn't my van. No reply to that. Fair. I walked the length of the pier again. I kicked a loose bolt into the trash. I bent and picked up a beer label that would cut someone's barefoot. I put it in my pocket. I took one last breath of the river air and headed for the stairs. Halfway up, my phone pinged. Advisory, Lansdowne Capital call originated from Warehouse District Payline. Route scrambled. Serial echo low. Of course it is, I said, still cheerful. Busy night. I reached the street. The city felt the same as it always did at that hour, taxis with tired drivers, couples who chose to walk instead of ride, night shift workers with bags under their eyes and time to spare. I blended in and paced myself toward Carter Street. I kept the bag with earth shut. I kept my eyes open. I kept my hands relaxed. If they wanted a sale, I would make it safe. If they wanted to turn the meat into a bad story, I would walk. Simple. We would see. Chapter 21, Carter Street Handoff. I cut south through the warehouse district with my hood up and my hands out of my pockets so every camera could see I wasn't gripping anything. The night held that steady port hum that makes everything feel routine. I liked that. Routine means fewer surprises. The curb along Carter Street had 3 burned-out bulbs in a row, a working one at the corner, and a half-working one that flickered like it couldn't make up its mind. I counted steps from the corner to the ladder where the concrete dipped and the river stink crept up through the gaps in the boards. Okay, I said happily. 2 hours. Plenty of room. I checked the time. I arrived 12 minutes early. I prefer early. It lets me fix things before people trip over them. I walked the length of the moorings and looked for loose bolts, slick patches, and places where a board would flex under someone's heel. I pressed down twice with my boot and felt a soft spot. I marked it with a thumb-sized piece of tape, gray on gray. I pushed the tape down harder and rubbed it until it blended. I stood at the midpoint and rolled my shoulders. Earth hovered in its plane case at my right side. Wind sat at my left, quiet. Light stayed behind my head like a patient panel I could lean on if needed. Darkness pooled at my shoes like thicker shade. I didn't plan to use all four. I liked knowing they were close. A truck door slammed a block over. A forklift beeped in short bursts and then stopped. A gull griped without commitment and went quiet. I breathed in and out and set two small anchors on the low wall beside me. I kept them flat and smooth. I shaped a thin wind cone over the ladder to cut echoes and another at my feet so my steps wouldn't broadcast. Then I made a quiet lane from the street to the moorings so anyone who walked here didn't sound like they were sneaking. People startle when they hear their own footsteps sound wrong. I prefer calm buyers. The first engine came in lazy from downriver. The tug from earlier held a slow line along the industrial face, one deckhand forward, one aft, pilot behind glass. It eased toward the mooring with that quiet confidence only river pilots carry. I lifted my hand and kept my palm visible. The second engine rolled up the street behind me. Van. Tires healthy. No rattle. It stopped at the corner. I didn't turn. The driver shut it off clean and stayed behind the wheel. The headlights stayed dead. That was a good sign. Someone understood the difference between present and loud. A third sound arrived, soft solace. Two sets. One heavier, one light. I didn't move. I let them come into my peripheral and then looked. Sportsmaster walked at an easy pace in a jacket zipped to the collar. He carried the hard case loose in his right hand without swinging it. Cheshire matched him on his left, hands empty, eyes awake. She clocked the distance to the river with one look. She checked the ladder. She checked the tape on the soft board. She saw the tape was mine and relaxed a fraction. "You didn't bring a parade," I said cheerfully. Sportsmaster set the case on the wall and pressed it down like he wanted to see if it wobbled. It didn't. "You stage well." "I like my ankles," I said. Cheshire stood where she could see the van and the tug without turning her head. "Any police?" she asked. "Busy with a van 3 blocks east," I said. "They will stay busy for 15 minutes. "That is not my van." She looked at me. The corner of her mouth moved a hair. "Of course it is not." The tug held off the wall and let the current keep it honest. The pilot gestured with 2 fingers to show he wouldn't bump the mooring unless told to. The deckhand on the bow kept the line coiled and ready but didn't throw. Sportsmaster slid the case my way with 2 fingers. "Half now," he said. "Half when we finish. If you say no after the demo, I take the case and leave. If you say yes, we finish and we don't waste time." "Clean," I said. "We'll keep it clean." He opened the latches and turned the lid. The same neat bricks sat inside in 2 rows. He lifted 3 and set them aside. Then he lifted a 4th and tapped the steel cylinder next to it. "Denom's correct. Cylinder opens if you like to count fast." "I like trusting," I said easily. "I'll let you keep your rhythm." He closed the case and set it upright. He didn't lock it. He put one foot against it like a doorstop and watched my hands. I raised both palms. "Ground rules again. No one goes into the river. No one jumps from the wall. No stabbing. No neck shots. No hitting me with the case." "People always add the case line," he said, amused. "Fine." Cheshire nodded once. "Proceed." I slid earth out of the plain case. The cover showed that steady brown like pressed soil. I opened the first page with a small motion. The air didn't crack. The boards didn't twist. I formed a flat pad at my knees, as wide as a door, and pressed it against the low wall. I leaned on it to show it had no give. Then I stepped back and dissolved it. Basics, I said. If someone trips near the edge, this catches a shin and not a skull. If someone charges, this gives you time to step and not throw elbows. Sportsmaster didn't argue. He didn't need the sales voice. He wanted hard pieces. He tapped the wall again and then looked at the ladder. Show me a catch. I shaped a round ring the size of a dinner plate and set it flush with the ladder side, 2 rungs above water. If someone slides, I said, this gives you half a second. It doesn't clamp. It stops. Hands do the rest. Cheshire walked to the ladder, gripped the side rail, and put weight on her foot as if she was stepping from a moving boat. I tightened the ring when her boot hit and stopped her ankle shy of a twist. She pulled back. I released. She didn't waste breath. She walked back and took her place. Sportsmaster pointed at the open stretch of mooring. Cage. I raised 4 flat posts at shoulder height, set them in a rectangle, and joined them with a waist-high screen. I left the top and bottom open. I stepped in. I pressed against the screen with both palms and pushed. The surface resisted without biting. I leaned my shoulder and felt it flex and return. He watched the flex closely. He wanted to see if the material stored energy or dumped it. He nodded once. Not springy. No bounce, I said. I don't want ricochets with elbows. He grunted, then pointed at his own feet. Hold me. I formed a thin ring at his right ankle and let it rise just enough to kiss the heel. He shifted weight and the ring followed the motion with a slow give. He tried a fast step. I held. He tried a pivot with a quarter turn. I let him have the quarter turn and then stopped the heel at a safe angle. He exhaled once and didn't waste a second trying to brute force it. Safe, he said. Release. I released. He stepped out of the invisible circle and checked his laces out of habit. He tilted his chin at me. Now you. Gladly, I said. He moved without warning. He didn't go for my throat. He drove forward with a clean shoulder pressure like a wrestler fishing for a balance point. I brought earth up in a thin panel at my chest and gave him something to meet that wouldn't shatter his collarbone. He hit, read the give, and changed angles by inches. I shifted and used wind once, just enough to take the squeak out of my heel on the board behind me. My back touched my pre-staged air cushion. I stepped right, then left, then set a block at his knee and stopped him from chasing. He reset without getting annoyed. Professionals reset. Cheshire watched the lines and the places where our feet wanted to go. She tracked the ring at his ankle, the panel at my ribs, and the way my shoulders kept the screen between us when he pushed. She saw the part I wasn't showing, I could choose not to escalate. She clocked that without a word. Now pressure on a joint, she said. Show me how you block a kick without giving him a fracture. Pick a leg, I said. She lifted her right knee and snapped a precise toe kick at the level of my hip. I brought up a panel to meet her shin, turned it 10 degrees to spread the load, and kept the surface dull. Her boot met the plane and stopped. She withdrew and rolled her ankle once to check. No win CE. She stepped back in line. Sportsmaster wiped his glove on his jacket. Fine. I've seen enough demos. Name the safety lines again. Room with 4 walls and a floor that won't cave, I said. No open pits. No chemicals on the floor. You bring 2 people who can pull someone out of a cuff without playing hero. A first aid kit with a real tourniquet and someone who knows the difference between a sprain and a break. You don't let a crew of 12 pile in because